What is up, fellow summoners, and welcome to the channel today for the next part of our class breakdown series. This time around we are looking at the skill class, and I believe, I looked through my roster before I got on here, I believe that I actually have all of the skill champions as 4-star characters, which I didn't I didn't realize that until I started looking through here. But yeah, I believe there's 15 of them that you can get, and as you can see there, I've got 15 of them. I'm sure if I made a mistake, somebody will correct me down in the comments, but I think that is correct. The skill class is home to a couple of really high-level characters, and then is full of a lot of mid-tier characters. If you're new to the series or haven't seen any of the other videos, I kind of place all the characters into a bottom, mid, and top tier. The purpose is really to help folks be able to kind of narrow down the characters that they should be ranking up. You should be focusing on characters in the top tier first to rank up, then kind of moving down the tier list as you go, as you grab characters past that. We'll also be looking at characters that are worth ranking up unduped, and characters that are worth using skill awakening gems on. So let's get right into the bottom tier. I think Daredevil Netflix, unfortunately, I've got him in the bottom tier. I did take him to rank 4 some time back. I was wanting to test out his ability to place armor breaks that actually last for quite a bit of time. I think I built up like maybe 12, 14, 15 armor breaks, and his damage output was still pretty terrible. He's a worse version of the classic Daredevil. Really doesn't hit that hard, so I've got him down to the bottom tier. KARNAK and FALCON for me, I'll probably take a little bit of flack from this, but unfortunately, KARNAK and FALCON, they're very similar characters. They lower defensive ability accuracy. That's kind of the utility that's built into them. However, unfortunately for both of them, there are characters in their own class in CROSSBONES, Black Widow, ELEKTRA, even Gwenpool that also lower defensive ability accuracy, and they also have other utility or higher damage output in them as well. So they kind of suffer a little bit because of that, and I've got them in the bottom tier of the skill class. And then this one I'll probably take some flack for as well. I know there are a lot of people that love Moon Knight, and I get it. Like, he's really cool looking. He is fun to play with, but he just doesn't have a good spot in the game that I would say, yeah, rank him up and use him in AQ, rank him up, use him in AW. His damage output is not that great. He is an okay defender in some of the lower tiers. When he has his chance to stun and you can kind of chain that all together, he's a decent character. But again, that's only for a few days out of the month. So it's really hard to tell somebody to invest a lot of resources into a character that's only good for a handful of days when there's so many other good options in the skill class. So that's my bottom tier. Really not a lot of characters in the bottom tier. A lot of these characters in the skill class are mid-tier and above. There's Black Panther Civil War starts us out in the mid-tier. I do have him at rank 5. I do still use him on my defense. He's not quite as good of a defender in the top tiers as he was in some of the lower tiers, but from time to time his reflective armor does still catch people, does quite a bit of damage. Sometimes people forget you can't stun him when he's got his armor up. So from time to time I do get kills. I would say in the lower tiers though, still a very good defender. Pretty good prestige boost as well. Not an offensive character, but definitely somebody, if you're trying to build a defensive roster, he's pretty good to throw in there. The classic Black Panther as well. I've got him at level 99. I have him at rank 5. He does a good amount of damage. There's a couple things that really hold him back for me. One is if you run against somebody who is bleed immune, his damage output sucks. There's no way around it. He relies very much for his damage on being able to bleed characters. If you can't bleed him, he suffers there. Plus, there are other characters in Gwenpool, and especially over in the mutant class with Wolverine, X-23, Archangel, who also do really good bleeds, but also have other utility outside of that built into them, plus some regen. So he suffers from that. I think it holds him back, keeps him down in the mid-tier. Black Widow, for me, is still a pretty solid champ. The thing that really sucks is in a 12.0 nerf update, whatever you want to call it, her damage output got cut pretty drastically. I think Black Widow, along with Doctor Strange, had some of the biggest reduction in the damage output during that nerf. And unfortunately, although I really like the aspect of just being able to run in with her subtlety signature ability and just have kind of a flat reduction, not have to worry about putting debuffs on the enemy or anything like that, I think that unfortunately her damage output holds her back quite a bit. And also, as you can see there, At level 9, it's only 43%, 44%, minus the 15 if you're going up against Mutant. So really, she has to be a fairly high signature level before that defensive ability reduction really kicks in at any sort of consistent rate. So we've got Black Panther, Civil War, Black Panther Classic, Black Widow, Winter Soldier. If you've been following the channel, you know my love-hate relationship with Winter Soldier. I do have him now at 99 as well. I think a very solid champ. I use my rank 5, or excuse me, my 5-star rank 4 Winter Soldier all the time in AW. I think his EMP upgrade, the chance to power drain the characters, the enemies, is a little bit underrated. I think he's got a lot of usefulness as far as being able to switch ammo types. If you're going against somebody who's bleed immune, you can switch over to the armor piercing. He's got a good incinerate round. He's got a good bleed with his S2. I think a very, very solid champ. Again, I think he suffers just because his damage output is a little bit low. Punisher is another character who, if he had just a little more utility wrapped up in him, I could rank him a little bit higher, but he's kind of a one-trick pony. He is a lot of fun to play since the update. Good damage output, good bleeds. His awakened ability can keep you alive in a tough situation, but he's pretty much just an offensive character. I suppose maybe in lower tiers, if you had him ranked up and not a lot of other choices, he might be a decent AW offensive character. However, you have to remember he does gain Fury, so Mystic Dispersion is going to help them out. Doesn't have any sort of heal block, regen, no power lock. I mean, he's pretty much just an offensive tool, and that's why he's in the mid tier. Then this one I struggled with a little bit, and I still don't know how I feel about it. Agent Venom is a very good defender. Pretty decent amount of damage output as well, especially if the enemy can bleed. If you look at his S1, he can lower enemies' evasion chance by 30%. However, what it came down to for me is that you really, I feel strongly that when you're building your roster, you should focus first on the offensive side for your Alliance War attack and for AQ as well, especially AQ. That's really where you want to focus. And I think that there in the game, there's a lot better options in AW offense and especially in AQ that you should put your Catalyst into before Agent Venom. So for me, that's why I got him in the mid tier. If I could put him kind of in the top tier of the mid tier, that's where I would put him at. You know, once you get through, you know, your top tier characters, which we'll talk about here in a second, and you're looking to build, you know, maybe like a secondary team to have for questing or for Alliance War, if your other characters are tied up, or looking for a good defender to start build. I think he's a good character for that. But yeah, that's my reasoning for having him in the mid tier. And then the top tier. The top tier is pretty well defined. I mean, Gwenpool, even unawakened, awakened, I mean, she's an excellent character all around. Her damage output cannot be denied. The video that I did the other day, I think really kind of opened my eyes once I realized that she can keep not heal blocks, excuse me. She can keep armor breaks, incinerates to a lesser degree, but especially with the S2, the Innervate, being able to control power is very, very strong, coupled with her really good damage output. But yeah, once you get her awakened, can't kill her with special attacks. She has excellent defensive ability reduction built into that as well. Very clearly the #1 character. Before you do anything else in the skill class, if you have a Gwenpool sitting there, put every resource you have into Gwenpool. Secondly, I do want to cover Hawkeye. Hawkeye, I feel like, is a character who's done like a complete 180 in like the last, I would say, like 6 to 8 months, somewhere around there. But power control is a very, very important aspect of the game. And if you look at all the characters in the game, you know, there's a lot of characters who have good damage output, but there's not necessarily a lot of characters who have good power control. And I think Hawkeye is a character that falls pretty well in between both of those. He's got good power control. He's actually got pretty good damage. They buffed him, I want to say, maybe like a year ago. I want to say they increased his critical rate. I can't remember what patch that was. But they increased his critical rate. They've increased his bleed from his S2. I think that got an update here recently as well. So he's no slouch. I mean, when it comes to damage output, I've seen people that have taken their rank 5, or excuse me, their 5-star rank 4 Hawkeye through Labyrinth of Legends on the easy path. He's a very simplistic, very easy character to learn. Excellent for beginner players, but still a lot of utility with that S1 power control built in for high-end playing, for kind of end game scenarios as well. And I think he's outside of Gwenpool, let me take a look here real quick. Yeah, outside of Gwenpool, yeah, that's pretty much the only power control champs. The only other one would be Winter Soldier with his Awakened ability when that does proc. So there's not a lot of power control built into this class, so that really elevates him as well. There's these two characters for me. They kind of go hand in hand. You've got Crossbones, who I think I like more and more. And then you've got ELEKTRA, which both of these characters are very similar and very different. I know it's kind of an oxymoron, but Crossbones, I guess they do the same thing, but they do it in very different ways. Crossbones, as you build up his Fury attacks, which he gains whenever he would crit, because he doesn't actually crit, but whenever he would have, he gains a Fury stack. And his Fury stack actually lowers defensive ability reduction. Did I say that right? It lowers defensive ability accuracy. If you look at the last line of his passive there, for each Fury effect, active Crossbones overpowers his opponent, decreasing the defensive ability accuracy by 22%. Now, the biggest thing about that is, yes, you do stack those very quickly, but if you hold down, swipe back, hold down your block, you will grab 3 stacks of Fury, which is 66% reduction right away at the beginning of the fight, and you kind of can keep those Fury stacks up for the remainder of the fight from there. I think he's a very, very, I don't want to say underrated champ, but I think his damage output is a little bit underrated. I want to get him to rank 5 pretty soon and test him out, but I've been very, very impressed with his damage output. Road to the Labyrinth, where you're dealing with things like spiked armor. When you crit, you don't have to worry about that with Crossbones. He's got a lot of utility for Road to the Labyrinth. The one part that he suffers in is Alliance War. Because of all those Furies you're gaining, Mystic Dispersion is just going to eat you up. That's kind of where ELEKTRA steps in. If you're needing somebody for Alliance War for defensive lowering reduction, she is an excellent champ for that, because she has no buffs that she gains in and of herself outside of Dexterity from the Mastery, but she's got really good damage output, lowers defensive ability accuracy by 85% when a debuff is active, which she gets that with her bleeds, and another bonus is if the enemy is bleed immune, that bleed is then converted over into an armor break instead, so you'll always have a chance to have that defensive ability reduction up when you're using your S1 and S2. Especially when she's awakened, her damage output is excellent. I would love to see her now as a 5-star character. She's been added. Would love to see what kind of damage output she can do. But really, Crossbones and ELEKTRA, both kind of up there for me in the top tier. It depends upon your roster, what you're needing. Whether it be a more kind of well-rounded character for possibly AQ, Road to the Labyrinth, special events, I think that's more Crossbones. If you're needing somebody more for Alliance War, I think even in AQ, depending upon the path you're running, I would go ELEKTRA. And then I'll finish it up with the last character I think we have to cover here, and that is the classic Daredevil. And I used to have my Daredevil at rank 5. I actually took him down when we got those tickets, because I didn't necessarily need him anymore for Alliance War on the Unblockable S2. But up until we had Starkey in the game, the new Spider-Man, his radar sense, being able to, you see 91% chance there at level 60, 91% chance to evade projectiles, basically every single time. He's a really, really strong character, and I've always said, it depends upon, are you running a path at Alliance War where you need the unblockable ability, and that's kind of that was my go-to answer on whether or not you should rank him up. But honestly, if you have maybe some excess skill catalysts that are floating around, I don't think it's a bad idea to kind of have him in your back pocket, at least ranked up, maybe not even to rank 5, but at least to rank 4, so that if special events come, for instance, like the new Spider-Man, the Web Slinger, there's an unblockable S1 there that you've got to fight a couple of times, and he can get right around that. You don't have to worry about the timing for any of that. The Collector, trying to get around the Collector, I haven't actually played with him myself, but I've heard that he can evade the S1, so he's a fairly decent option for the Collector. But yeah, I think his ability to fully get around projectiles is somebody that you want to have in your roster. Again, he will need to be he will need to be awakened before you will start to get that benefit. But yeah, I've kind of changed my tune on that. I think he's worth ranking up to at least 4 and kind of having in your back pocket, whether you use him consistently or not. There's just really nobody else in the game outside of the new Spider-Man that can come even close to what he can do. Now moving over into characters that are still worth ranking up, even if they are unawakened or unduped. I've got Gwenpool there, no surprise. Gwenpool still has excellent damage output with her bleeds. Still has Innervate, Armor Break that she can keep up. That is not tied to her Awakened ability. Crossbones I've got up there as well. In fact, Crossbones has almost... there's almost no change to the way that you will play him when he's awakened. Basically, there's a chance for him to shrug off debuffs and convert it over into a Fury, which is nice. But again, it really is not going to make that much of a difference if you're running him, let's say, an AQ, a Road to the Labyrinth, or anything like that. Kind of paired with him, with Crossbones, is Elektra. Of the two, she does benefit the most from being awakened, just because she does receive a fairly substantial damage output. But unawakened, she still has the ability to greatly decrease the ability or defensive ability accuracy of the enemy, and still has fairly decent damage output. So again, it really depends upon what your roster needs there between Crossbones and Elektra, but both are worth ranking up, even if they're unawakened. HAWKEYE is another character, like Crossbones, doesn't have a huge effect on his overall gameplay and utility. When he's unawakened, you get Hemorrhage, which is a secondary bleed, a chance to apply it when he uses a special. Basically, you can only stack that once per fight, though. It ticks for a minute. I don't know if that's bugged or if that's the way it's supposed to be, but it's nice to have. But again, if you're bringing him for purposes of lowering or controlling power, that is still there even when he's unawakened. So I've got Gwenpool, Crossbones, Elektra, HAWKEYE, and also Agent Venom, which Agent Venom's awakened ability does give him increased damage output with Clintar Rage. However, if you are using him as a defender, which most people will be doing, if you look there, his passive ability at 70% to shrug off debuffs, that is not linked to his awakened ability. So you can take him up as a defender unawakened, still really, really strong. Then finally, over into characters that I would use a skill awakening gem on. No surprise here, Gwenpool. She's excellent unduped, even better when she's duped. I don't need to go back into all that and explain it again, but if you've got a Gwenpool sitting there and a skill awakening stone, I would put it right into her, no questions asked. Classic Daredevil, as I mentioned before, his radar sense, the ability to evade projectiles, is all tied into being awakened. So again, if you need somebody who can reliably do that, then definitely somebody who's worth awakening. Elektra, again, she's kind of on both sides of the fence here. Still pretty solid unawakened, but definitely she's worth awakening if you've already got Gwenpool. If you've already got Gwenpool awakened, I think Elektra becomes a very good secondary option, just because her damage output does become greatly increased by being awakened. So yeah, Gwenpool, Daredevil, Elektra, and then I think to kind of a lesser degree, if we're talking about using these, it really depends upon your roster again. Black Widow, her subtlety, the chance to lower defensive ability accuracy is tied into being awakened. And if you don't have a Gwenpool, Crossbones, Elektra, if you don't have them in your roster, but you need somebody who can do that, I think she's probably worth awakening, again, to a little bit lesser degree. And then also Winter Soldier. I think Winter Soldier is a solid champ to use in story questing. I think he's a solid champ to use in Alliance War. And having the EMP upgrade, a chance to power drain champs, while it may seem like a low percentage, that 25%, it is going to proc several times throughout the fight. So again, it depends upon your roster for Black Widow and Winter Soldier, but there's not a lot of great options to use it on if you've already got Gwenpool, Daredevil, and Elektra. So if you've already got all those set up, you know, in the case of Elektra, if you have Elektra, you don't want to use Black Widow, but again, if you need somebody and you don't have them in your roster, Black Widow is a fairly decent option there, and then Winter Soldier. If I had to give a top 3, it's a little difficult just because a lot of these characters are similar. But obviously at the top you've got Gwenpool. Below that, I think I would put HAWKEYE just because of the power control. And then in the third place, it's difficult to say because it just depends upon what you need. You could put Daredevil there, you could put Crossbones there, you could put Elektra there. It really just depends. You know, if you've got Gwenpool, especially awakened, she's already got defensive ability reduction built into her, so it's hard to bump up Crossbones and Elektra kind of too high on that list. But you know, I think that I probably, if I had to, would put Crossbones there just because of his unique playstyle and how effective he is in Road to the Labyrinth. So yeah, I guess that's what I'll put at my top 3. I'll put Gwenpool, HAWKEYE, and then Crossbones. Again, that third spot I think probably is debatable between a couple of characters. Alright guys, I hope that this has been a help to you. Hope you're enjoying the series. We will do the science class. Yeah, science class next. We'll do that one in a couple of days. As always, if you have questions, you're welcome to leave them in the comment section below. I'll do my best to get to everybody. Anything else? Oh yes, Twitter. If you'd like to reach me over on Twitter, the link to that will be in the description as well. Thank you, as always, so much for the support. Until I see you all in the next video, have a great day.